pretty safe to say. God give it, God take it away. It's the worldwide American way. I'm living proof.
What's going on, team? Proof here, and I'm just getting back from my ARG States that took place this weekend. It was a nice turnout. We had about 24 to 26 people, and I ended up getting third place in the event with Crazy 8, my newest version of Crazy 8. And if you're here for the deck list, I want to disappoint you in that this video isn't going to have the deck list. I'm going to do a separate video where I go over my latest version of the deck, because it's pretty different than what marginally different, pretty different, very different, somewhere in there from the videos where I showcased it earlier this week and last week with the with all the draw triggers and whatnot. So I tweaked it up for my own personal preferences and what I felt what I needed it for. So I'm gonna do that in a separate video either later today or tomorrow. I'm gonna have that going up. But I ended up getting third place in the event. I went 4-1, and it was really nice turnout, really fun crowd. It was the place the shop we were at is kind of small in the back, so it was really close knit and tight quarters. So you got close to, you had to like be nice to everybody and like just be a nice fun crowd around everybody. It was a nice fun atmosphere. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take a little bit of time just to go through how my personal games, as I want to say, just kind of talk about the things that I noticed and kind of break down how things went. So hope you enjoy, and let's go ahead and get into it. So my first round opponent was against Vanquisher Narukami, and with the new Fighters Collection stuff coming out, the main things pretty much the only thing I looked out for was Impede Dragon, because his his flip skill can really mess up the things that I want to do if I let it get to that point. So the entire game I was trying to make sure I didn't want to put myself in a position to where Impede Dragon would do just what his name says and impede me and slow me down. So both games I ended up winning 2-0 in this particular game, in this particular match. And both games I ended up doing Hellhard 8 on my third stride, because I played it a little bit slower while I accumulated PGs and G guards, so that I wanted him to use an Impede Dragon, because even though I know Hellhard 8 can play around a double Impede Dragon when it's Vanquisher, I wanted him to use one, so that just to make life a little bit easier on myself. So I always use my second stride to go into Picaro to make a full board, just to tempt him to want to impede. Otherwise I would use either Mayhem Tiger or Cobalt Impulse to mess up his board or mess with his hand or push damage really far, just in the chance that I couldn't get to 8 effectively. I would still have a backup plan in motion, which is generally how I want to play it. If you can hear that, that's the ice cream truck. And it was really cool game. Really made me think a little bit about how to play around some stuff and how to not manipulate my opponent, but do what I need to do so that I wouldn't get shut down by what he wanted to do. And it was scary because a couple times I remember one game after my Picaro, or I opted to use Picaro instead, or I went to Picaro instead of using another Mecha Trainer I had in my hand to fetch a PG, and he ended up going into Voltage, and his Chatura, and I think it was Rock Climb, was like 30,000 plus, and I was low on G guards because it didn't come in time. So I had to use 4 cards in my hand versus using the PG. So that's why it was, but at the same time I used Picaro the previous turn instead of going for the PG. So we used an Impede Dragon, so in case you had a second one, I was still okay. So that's kind of the things that I thought about, was using certain skills at certain times. And my main goal for this tournament was to play test my changes. I think I said that, and just figure out how to continue improving my play with the deck because it doesn't play the same as the traditional Rise and Miracle or Super Miracle decks that I've showcased before.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking that one 2-0, and really cool dude. I met him before, and he's really nice to play against, and he's really fun. And my second round was against Luard, traditional Luard. I don't think he had any Diablo pieces in the deck, so it was pretty much straight up, just a straight Luard deck. I believe he had stand, so it wasn't 12 crit, which is something I took notice of as soon as I could. And in that game, there wasn't really anything interesting in terms of interactions, but I ended up taking note that series 2-0 because I was able to effectively use Hellheart 8 on my second stride both games, and my hand was set up so that he didn't have a way to stop me from doing it because my heals and my Mecha Trainers came early and soon enough to where I was able to search out the remaining heals and then just set up the Supernova and then into my Linuses into Hellheart 8 both games. And it was nice to see how I was able to get past Luard the way I was, because one of my biggest issues when set 9 came out was trying to get around Luard with the Ryzen deck, just because how fast of a hand he can generate, even faster now with Belial. And it was a frustrating matchup, and it's gotten a lot easier in my favor, or it swung better in my favor now because Hellheart 8 is there. And if you don't have your Hellheart 8 ready, so you don't have your G guards, you need to make sure you don't walk yourself into Spectral. Phantom Blaster Diablo isn't as big of a problem because how big Linus gets. One Linus can 2-to-pass a Phantom Blaster Diablo on his own, but Spectral is an issue just because the restand, and it eats away at your pieces if you're not ready for it. So it's something to keep in mind if you want to pick up the Crazy 8 deck when you're going against Luard, because it's a meta deck, so it's a popular deck, and you're going to see it often. So you need to know when and how to play your own game so that you won't fall into those two big strides. Orgeyser isn't as big of a problem if you're getting ready to go into 8 because the drawn cards won't be enough to stop 8 on his own. So you need to watch out for the more offensive strides, which are the Phantom Diablo and Spectral Diablo. And my third round game was against Tachikaze, and I ended up losing this one 2-1. The first game I just got bodied by double crit when he rode to his grade 3 after Tank Mammoth did his retire, be called back shenanigans, which hurts a lot for any deck, but it hurts me just because I don't want to use my pieces in hand. And then the second game I ended up taking it with Hellheart 8. In the third game, I misplayed because I didn't account for Freeze Nyx being able to get him a soul charge and counter charge, which let him bring back Tank Mammoth once more. So after I used one of my G guards to drop an Eliza, and I drew a card when I really didn't have to, and I ended up drawing into a Hive Maker, which made my hand 3 Hive Makers, a Silence Joker, a Heal Linus, a PG, and then one other card. And my rationale for dropping and drawing was to try and get a Frog Raider into my hand for my upcoming 8 turn, because I knew I was gonna, in my heart of hearts, I was gonna get through that turn and just have the Frog Raider and everything I needed, because I didn't want to use Rising Nova Stride skill to call out Frog Raider if I didn't need to. And by doing that, I snatched defeat from the jaws of victory for myself, because I didn't have enough to stop the 11k Mammoth swing, because I didn't hit a trigger on my 5th damage. And so that was sad. So it was an unnecessary move. So I'm not going to say I lost because of luck, but I lost because I made an unnecessary move by doing that. So it's something I need to keep in mind for myself in the future, and it's something that I took with me for the rest of the 2 remaining rounds after that, was to just think through my plays a little bit more, because even if I did draw the Frog Raider, there was a strong chance I was going to have to use it to guard anyway, because of how aggressive he was being with his tank mammoths and Gaia's stride skill to call back his units. And it was just an unnecessary move on my part. I ended up losing as a result, but I don't mind losing if I can recognize where I could have done better in the process. So like if he double crit me both games, there's not really much you can learn from that versus maybe guarding sooner. But even then, if you felt your best move was to take the damage and he just getting crits along the way, that's one thing. But in this case, I saw my error once the game was over, and I shouldn't have done that. So I put myself in an unnecessary position, because otherwise I could have guarded and then used High Maker in my hand to stride, and then I would have had enough to push through, because he was at 4 with 5 cards in his hand, and I was getting ready to go into Hellheart 8. So there was a good chance I was going to make it, be able to get that last 2 damage in. So basically, the takeaway is just to think, for me, it's just think a little bit more about my plays. Don't make unnecessary plays when I don't need to. Don't make the greedy play when you don't need to. So I lost that one 1-2, which put my overall record at 2-1 going into the 4th round. And my 4th round opponent was Dimensional Robo with Diehawk, doing all the stuff and the things with putting 4 cards into your soul to stride, no matter, to get the first stride regardless of what grade you're at. And so the first game I got completely obliterated by a combo of Die Kaiser or Die Earth into Die Kaiser Leon with Laurel on the board, and he got a grade 3 on each check on Laurel's restand. The second game went much better in my favor, and I tailored the game to get to Hellheart 8, and I was able to take him out from there with the fun interaction, which I'm going to talk about in the deck video later. And the third game, since the way we did it was the loser of the previous round chose who would go first, he let me go first. And one of my things I kept remembering was, which to me this is like the most skillful round that I've had in the longest time, because what I remember was, if I had a PG in my hand to ride, I could control his damage to where he can't ride to grade 3, do his superior stride into a Die Earth to recoup the advantages from that, or to mitigate the losses from that. Since I won the previous round, going into the 3rd round, he let me go first. So I rode into a PG because I kept it in my opening hand when I mulliganed, and he rode to a 7K and attacked. I, not wanting to get completely hit by Die Earth again, I intentionally skipped my grade 2 ride and attacked with my vanilla 6K, and he no guarded, and I hit a draw trigger, passed it to Mecha Trainer so I wouldn't give him that damage, because I knew if I could at least survive past his first stride, I would give myself a fighting chance. So on his grade 2 ride, he rode, attacked again. On my turn, I rode to grade 2. I think I used Mecha Trainer to search out a heal at the time. Either a heal or stride fodder, I can't remember. But I remember that after that I called Cobalt Impulse to the board, just in case I checked a critical trigger, one of my critical triggers in the deck. And I attacked, he no guarded, I did hit a critical trigger, and I passed the crit to Cobalt and gave him 1 damage. And that pretty much swung the game in my favor, because he didn't have the 2 damage there to go into the Die Earth interaction that he had. And so he rode to Die Kaiser and did the superior stride, but he just went into a vanilla Die Earth without anything with the skill to do it with, and he just attacked. So I went into my turn, I rode, strode, got my remaining heals into my hand, did what I needed to do, and put him at 3 so he wouldn't break ride with Die Kaiser. And it was this really good game management in my opinion, just to not succumb to my opponent's strategy and just have to deal with something when I otherwise wouldn't be ready for it. And after that, he went into his turn with Daikaiser Leon, and when he attacked, I used all my G guards on his Leon attack, one of which was being a max. I targeted my Frog Raider that I put down behind Cobalt the previous turn, and then I used 2 Linuses. So no matter what he did, minus checking 3 grade 3s, I was safe from Leon's attack, which would have been good for me, and well, it would result in the same thing because he didn't have Laurel on the board at this particular juncture. And to me, that was just a really good play and kind of justified max, because I knew he would be good in certain situations, but he never really came into play besides being flip fodder for Linus. But in this particular instance, he came through as just a regular G guard because his Daikaiser Leon was attacking for 29 or 30 at the time. So my fear was that he would check a trigger and 2 grade 3s to get rid of my 2 Linuses and break through. But with that extra max in there, I afforded myself the chance to survive with regardless of what he did, minus a triple trigger, a triple grade 3 check. And at that point, I'm like, you got it, you deserve it. So I set up that way. I took the rest of his attacks, went into 8. I had another Mecha Trainer, used it to fetch Frog Raider, and I just went off from there and got the victory 2-1 in my favor. And that really put me in a really good mood just because I played it that well to where I put myself in the position to not get destroyed by what my opponent had going on before I was ready to get destroyed by it. So it's something I need to remember going forward, just know what my opponent's end game is and try to do what I can to not walk into it, so that way I can get to 8 effectively or to whatever end game option I have available, whether it's Picaro or Miracle Ace or something. And then the last round of Swiss was against another Luard player. The first game was paint by numbers of getting my heals and going into Supernova, get my flip, go into Hellheart 8 after that, after I survived his follow-up turn. And game 2 was a measure of, it was vanilla beats because he had Luard, I believe. No, game 2 he didn't have Luard, but he didn't want a G assist for it because he didn't have a stride fodder in his hand, and he never saw the stride fodder throughout the game. So he pretty much took the entire game of attacking grade 2 and then poking at rears, and I did the same thing, but I was on grade 3. Also used a Sea Breeze at one point as well, and pretty much just nickel and dimed our way from start to finish and just kind of take an inventory of my deck along the way, so that I knew I had draw triggers in there, so I didn't want to run the risk of decking out. So I monitored that. Eventually I got over the wall there and pushed him to 6 damage, ended up winning, which put me at 4-1 after Swiss. It wasn't an exciting game, but I was still happy to come out with the victory because who knows what could have happened if I played things differently along the way. And with that, I put myself at 4-1 and put myself in 3rd after Swiss. First place was Sean, who I'm cool with. He ended up getting 1st place after Swiss with Wiseman. 2nd place was a guy named Lee. He was a Tachi player who beat me the previous round, so I'm happy he placed well. 3rd was me, and I didn't get down who everybody else was, but I remember there was 2 Tachi players, I think a couple Luards, a Wiseman, myself. I just can't remember, but it'll be up soon. Keep a lookout. It might go on Vanguardians when I know, because I know who the judge is. He might put it up there. He might not. We'll see. But your boy got 3rd. I got another invite. Well, another invite. I didn't get the first round bye because you don't get it if you don't play it out. But as I said before, my goal was to test my changes, and I came back happy with it. and we'll see once I do some more evaluation over the next 2 months or month and a half ish before ARG Nationals in August comes, to see how my deck changes from there or from now to then. So that'll do it for me. I talked way too long about 5 games. But you guys know how wordy I get, and hope you enjoyed. Look out for more. Look out for the deck profile coming up soon. And until next time, guys, peace. Be easy.